in the Sterling Court boardroom was thin enough to slice. On one side of the gleaming architectural model of the Ethelred Tower stood Sloane, her vision sharp and audacious. On the other, Reese, his style a quiet, lethal minimalism. They were the final two, the prodigies competing for a contract that would define a generation of the city's skyline. Between them stood Julian, their mutual mentor, his smile doing little to mask the brutal tension. They were rivals down to the bone, and this was war.
They were rivals down to the bone.
That night, the city's energy felt like a current under Sloane's skin. She sought refuge at the Alibi, a dark wood and whiskey bar where people went to be unseen. And there he was, Reese, tucked into a corner booth, the amber light catching the intense focus on his face as he sketched in a leather-bound notebook. For the first time, she saw the artist, not the adversary. He looked up, and the city outside seemed to fall silent. One old-fashioned turned into two. They talked about the impossible curve of a Calatrava bridge, the soul of a Louis Kahn library, everything except the billion-dollar tower that stood between them. The animosity that had defined their careers melted into a dangerous magnetic pull. When they left, the city was weeping with rain, but under the small canopy of Reese's umbrella, a fragile truce was forged in the space between heartbeats. His loft was a testament to his design philosophy, clean lines, stark whites, and a single massive window that drank in the city. Their affair was the opposite. Messy, chaotic, and utterly consuming. They broke every rule they made, tangling their professional and personal lives until they were impossible to separate. Passion became their secret language, spoken in hushed tones in the hours between midnight and dawn. Days later, they found themselves in the atrium of the city's modern art museum, the silence, a stark contrast to their recent nights. They didn't speak, but moved through the space, tracing the lines of the sculptures with their eyes. Reese paused by a kinetic piece, its metal fins shifting in the air currents. It breathes, he whispered, and Sloane saw in his gaze the same reverence she felt. Their rivalry was built on a shared language, she realized, a love for form and function that ran deeper than any competition. Back at Sloane's studio, surrounded by her own blueprints and models, the truce felt fragile again. This load-bearing column is too aggressive, Reese commented, pointing to a key element of her tower design. It fights the grace of the spire, Sloane bristled. It's bold, it's a statement. The air crackled with their old friction. A reminder that even in the quiet moments, the Ethelred Tower stood between them, a silent, concrete judge. It's a game-changer, Sloane, truly. Julian's praise was the validation she'd been working for. She had just walked him through the schematics for her tower's kinetic facade, a revolutionary design that moved with the wind. It was her ace, the thing that would make her name immortal in the world of architecture. Leaving his office, she felt more than confident. She felt invincible. The email landed in her inbox like a bomb. It was a press release from the competition committee, congratulating Reese on his bold and innovative kinetic facade. Her design, her words, her soul, stolen and signed with his name. The confrontation in her studio was a maelstrom of accusations and denials. I would never do this, Sloane, Reese pleaded, his face pale with shock. How could you even think that? But all she could see was the ultimate betrayal. After Reese left, the silence in Sloane's studio was deafening. She sank into her chair, the city lights outside blurring through her tears. On her desk lay a small, intricate sketch of a bird in flight, something Reese had drawn for her at the bar that first night. She angrily swept it to the floor, the delicate paper a symbol of everything she had just lost. The accusation echoed in Reese's mind as he stood alone in his loft. He tried her phone a dozen times, each call going straight to voicemail. He looked at the
tried her
window
phone a
that had
dozen
framed
times,
their embrace,
each call
but
going
now
straight
the
to
city felt
voicemail.
cold and
He
distant.
looked at the window that
He
had
was an
framed their
artist,
embrace,
a creator.
but now the city
The
felt
idea of
cold and
stealing,
distant.
of plagiarizing
He was an
another's soul,
artist, a
was a
creator.
violation
The
of his
idea
very
of
being.
stealing, of
He had been
plagiarizing
accused
another's
of the
soul,
one crime
was a
he would never
violation
commit.
of his very being.
Doubt
He had been
was a bitter
accused of the
pill,
one crime
but
he would
Reese's
never
desperation
commit.
felt real.
Doubt was a bitter
While
pill,
Sloane iced
but
him
Reese's
out, he dove
desperation
into a
felt
digital
real.
rabbit hole,
While
fueled
Sloane
by
iced
coffee
him out,
and a need to
he
clear
dove
his
into a
name.
digital
He
rabbit hole
bypassed
fueled
Sterling
by
Corp's
coffee
firewalls,
and a need to
tracing
clear
the data
his name.
packet that had stolen
He
her file.
bypassed
It
Sterling
was a
Corp's
ghost,
firewalls,
routed through a
tracing the
dozen
data
proxy
packet that had
servers,
stolen
but it
her
left a
file.
faint trail.
It was a
Someone is
ghost,
playing us,
routed
he
through a
texted
dozen
her,
proxy servers,
attaching a
but
screenshot
it
of
left a
encrypted
faint
code.
trail.
I'm going to
Someone
find
is
them.
playing us, he texted
Hitting
her,
a wall of
attaching
encryption
a
he couldn't
screenshot
break,
of
Reese
encrypted
made a
code.
call.
I'm
Soon
going to
after,
find them.
Anya,
Hitting a
a
wall of
freelance
encryption he couldn't
cybersecurity
break,
expert
Reese
with
made
a
a
mind
call.
like a steel
Soon
trap,
after,
sat
Anya,
beside him.
a freelance
This is professional,
cybersecurity
Reese.
expert with a
Very
mind like a
clean,
steel
she
trap,
murmured, her
sat
fingers
beside
flying
him.
across the keyboard.
This is
They
professional,
wanted
Reese.
you to be the
Very
obvious
clean,
suspect,
she murmured,
but they got
her
sloppy.
fingers
She
flying
pointed to a
across
single
the
line of
keyboard.
code.
They
Every
wanted you to
ghost
be
leaves
the
a trace.
obvious suspect,
This one leads
but they
right
got
back to the
sloppy.
Sterling Corp
She
server.
pointed to a single line of
Sloane
code.
sought solace
Every
from the
ghost
one
leaves a
person
trace.
she thought she could
This
trust.
one leads
She
right back
explained
to the
everything to
Sterling Corp
Julian, who
server.
listened with a
Sloane
pained,
sought
fatherly
solace from
expression.
the one
He was
person she
always
thought
too
she could
ambitious for his
trust.
own good.
She explained
Julian
everything
soothed,
to
placing a
Julian,
hand on her
who
arm.
listened with
But
a
don't
pained,
worry. A
fatherly
design that
expression.
revolutionary.
He was always too
Why?
ambitious
It's a
for his
real
own
game
good,
changer.
Julian
You'll bounce
soothed,
back. The
placing a
phrase
hand
hit
on her
her
arm.
like a physical blow.
But don't worry,
Her
a
exact
design
words.
that
The
revolutionary.
words she had only ever
Why?
said to him.
It's a real game
She
changer.
walked out of his office
You'll
in a
bounce
trance.
back.
The city
The
sounds
phrase
were
hit
muffled.
her like a
The
physical
bustling
blow.
street, a
Her
distant
exact
film.
words,
Game changer.
the words she
the
had
word
only
echoed,
ever said
each
to him.
repetition peeling
She
back
walked
a
out of
layer
his
of
office
deceit.
in a trance.
Julian's praise,
city
his
sounds were
encouragement,
muffled.
his
The
fatherly
bustling
concern,
street, a
it
distant
had
film
all
game
been a
changer.
lie. A
The word
performance.
echoed each
He hadn't been
repetition,
mentoring them.
peeling back
He
a
had been
layer
pitting
of
them
deceit.
against each other,
Julian's
waiting for the
praise,
perfect
his
moment to steal
encouragement,
from them
his
both.
fatherly concern.
She
It
ran
had all been a
through
lie,
the
a
office,
performance.
down the street,
He hadn't been
not
mentoring them.
stopping until she
He
was
had
at
been
Reese's
pitting them
door.
against each other,
She found him
waiting for
standing
the
before a
perfect
monitor,
moment to steal
a
from them
digital
both.
map of the city on the
She
screen,
ran through the
with a
office,
single
down the
blinking
street,
red dot.
not
The
stopping
IP
until she
address,
was at Reese's
he
door.
said without turning
She
around,
found him
his voice
standing
tight
before a
with fury.
monitor.
It
A
came
digital
from
map of the
inside
city on
Julian's
the screen
office.
with a
She
single
didn't
blinking
need to
red
see the
dot.
proof.
The
She
IP
saw the
address,
truth
he
in the
said
rigid
without
line
turning
of his
around,
shoulders.
his voice
They weren't
tight
enemies.
with fury.
They were
It came
collateral
from inside
damage.
Julian's office.
The anger
She didn't
came
need
first,
to see the proof.
hot and blinding.
She saw the truth
Then
in the
came
rigid
the
line of his
quiet
shoulders.
understanding.
They
They
weren't
sat on the
enemies.
floor of his loft.
They were
The
collateral
city
damage.
lights their only
The
witness,
anger came
and talked
first,
for hours.
hot and
They
blinding.
spoke of their shared
Then came the
ambition,
quiet
the
understanding.
pressure from Julian
They
that
sat
had
on the
always
floor of
pushed
his
them
loft.
apart,
The
and the
city
affair
lights
that had
their
briefly
only
pulled them
witness
together.
and talked for
In the
hours.
ruins of the
They
betrayal,
spoke of their
they
shared
found
ambition,
a new,
the pressure
solid
from
ground of
Julian
shared
that had
truth.
always pushed them apart,
We can't just
and the
expose
affair
him,
that had briefly
Sloane
pulled them
said,
together.
her voice
In
hard
the
as
ruins
steel.
of the
We
betrayal,
have to beat
they
him.
found a new,
We have to
solid
win.
ground
Reese
of shared
nodded,
truth.
a slow,
We can't just
determined
expose him,
fire in
Sloane
his
said,
eyes.
her
He
voice
unrolled
hard
his
as
original
steel.
blueprints
We have
next
to
to
beat him.
hers.
We have
On
to
the
win.
floor, two
Reese
visions
nodded,
of the
a
same
slow,
skyline lay side by
determined fire
side,
in his eyes.
her audacious,
He
flowing
unrolled his
forms
original
and his stark,
blueprints next
elegant
to hers.
lines.
On the
He
floor,
played us against
two
each other,
visions of the
Reese
same
said.
skyline
Let's
lay
show
side
him
by
what
side.
happens when we
Her
play together.
audacious, flowing
Fury
forms
became
and
their
his
fuel.
stark,
They
elegant
worked for
lines.
48
He
hours
played us
straight.
against each
A
other, Reese
whirlwind
said.
of coffee,
Let's show him what
charcoal
happens when we
sketches,
play
and
together.
furious debate.
Fury became
His
their fuel.
minimalism
They
carved
worked
away her
for 48
excesses,
hours
leaving a
straight.
core of
A
pure,
whirlwind of
breathtaking
coffee,
form.
charcoal
Her
sketches,
audacious vision
and furious
pushed his
debate.
clean lines into
His
soaring,
minimalism carved away
impossible
her
shapes.
excesses,
It was a
leaving a
design
core of
born from
pure,
betrayal,
breathtaking
but built
form.
on a newfound,
Her audacious
unbreakable
vision
trust.
pushed his clean between lines into soaring,
Reese
impossible
said,
shapes.
stopping mid-sentence.
It was a design born
They
from
had been
betrayal,
stuck for
but
hours
built
on
on
how
a
to integrate
newfound,
her kinetic
unbreakable
facade
trust.
with his structural
Wait, Reese
skeleton.
said, stopping
What if the
mid-sentence.
structure is the facade?
They had been stuck for
What
hours
if the
on how to
minimalism
integrate her
isn't just
kinetic facade
aesthetic,
with his
but
structural
functional?
skeleton.
Sloane's
What if the
eyes lit
structure
up.
is the facade?
It was the breakthrough.
What if the minimalism
The final
isn't
piece
just
clicked
aesthetic,
into
but
place,
functional?
not as a
Sloane's
compromise,
eyes lit
but
up.
as a perfect,
It was the
seamless
breakthrough.
fusion
The
that was
final
greater than
piece clicked
anything
into
they had
place,
imagined alone.
not as a compromise,
We
but
need a
as a
smoking
perfect,
gun, Sloane
seamless
insisted,
fusion that was
something they
greater
can't
than
deny.
anything they had
Reese called
imagined
Anya
alone.
again.
We need a
Working
smoking
remotely,
gun,
she helped
Sloane
him set a
insisted.
digital trap,
Something
a
they
final
can't deny.
revision file for the
Reese
kinetic
called Anya
facade,
again.
baited and
Working
planted on the
remotely,
Sterling
she
Corp
helped
server.
him set a
They
digital trap.
watched late into the
A
night
final revision
until,
file for the
finally,
kinetic
they
facade
got the
baited
alert.
and planted on the
Julian had
Sterling Corp
accessed the
server.
file from his home
They
computer.
watched late into the
They
night
had
until
him.
finally they got the
The
alert.
final model was
Julian
a
had
masterpiece.
accessed the file
It
from his
rose
home
from the
computer.
table like a crystal,
They had him.
its lines
The
clean
final
and
model
sharp.
was a masterpiece.
Yet it seemed to
It
ripple with a
rose from the
captured
table
energy,
like a crystal,
promising
its
movement and
lines
life.
clean and
It
sharp.
was neither his
Yet it
nor
seemed to ripple
hers,
with a
but
captured
theirs.
energy,
Sloane and
promising
Reese
movement
stood before
and
it,
life.
the
It was
exhaustion
neither
of the
his
last
nor
few days
hers, but
forgotten.
theirs.
They were no
Sloane
longer
and
just
Reese stood before
architects,
it,
they
the
were
exhaustion
partners.
of the last few days
On the
forgotten.
day of the final
They were no
presentation,
longer
they
just
walked into the
architects.
boardroom
They were
not as
partners.
rivals,
On
but
the
as a
day of the
single,
final
unified
presentation,
force.
they walked into
The
the
same
boardroom not
executives
as
were there,
rivals,
but this
but as a
time,
single
Julian
unified
sat
force.
with them at the main
The
table,
same
a picture
executives were
of calm
there,
authority.
but this time
He gave
Julian
Sloane
sat
and
with them
Reese
at
a
the main
condescending
table,
smile
a
as they
picture
sat
of
up,
calm authority.
unaware that he wasn't a judge
Sloane
in this
and Reese a
contest.
condescending
He was
smile
the
as they
exhibit.
set up,
They
unaware that he
began,
wasn't a judge
their
in this
voices
contest.
alternating,
He was the
weaving
exhibit.
the story
They
of their
began,
design.
their
They
voices
spoke of
alternating,
minimalism and
weaving the
movement,
story of their design.
of structure
They spoke
and
of
soul.
minimalism
And
and
then,
movement,
on the
of
main
structure and
screen,
soul.
Sloane
And
brought
then,
up the
on the main
slide.
screen,
True
Sloane brought up
innovation
the
must be
slide.
built on a
True
foundation of
innovation must be
integrity,
built on
she
a
said, her
foundation of
voice ringing
integrity,
with clarity.
she said,
The
her
screen
voice
flashed
ringing
with
with clarity.
screenshots of the server
This
logs,
screen flashed
the
with
IP
screenshots
trace,
of the server
and the
logs,
timestamp
the
of
IP
Julian's
trace,
access to
and
their
the
baited
timestamp
file,
of
a
Julian's access
foundation
to
that
their
has been
baited file.
compromised.
A foundation that
A
has been
gasp went through
compromised.
the room.
A gasp
The
went through the
executive
room.
stared from the
The
screen to Julian,
executive stared from
whose
the
face
screen
had
to
turned
Julian,
a sickly
whose
white.
face had
He
turned
started
a
to
sickly
bluster,
white.
to deny,
He started to
but the
bluster to
evidence was
deny,
absolute,
but the evidence was
displayed for all to
absolute,
see. The
displayed for all
chairman
to
of the
see.
board,
The
a
chairman of the
stern-faced woman,
board, a
quietly picked up
stern-faced
her
woman,
phone. The
quietly
battle was
picked up
over.
her phone.
There was no
The
shouting,
battle was over.
only a
There was
devastating,
no shouting,
professional
only a
silence
devastating,
as
professional
Julian's legacy
silence
crumbled
as
into dust.
Julian's legacy crumbled into dust.
6 months later,
6 months
Sloane
later,
and Reese stood on
Sloane
the
and Reese
observation
stood
deck
on
of
the
a neighboring
observation deck
skyscraper,
of a neighboring
looking
skyscraper,
down at the massive
looking down
foundation
at
of
the
their
massive
tower.
foundation of
The
their tower.
sounds of
The
construction
sounds of
were the sounds
construction
of
were
their
the
victory.
sounds of their
The
victory.
Ethelred
The
Tower,
Ethelred
their
Tower, their
was
tower,
finally
was
rising.
finally rising.
Reese took her hand,
Reese
his
took her
fingers
hand,
lacing with
his
hers.
fingers
They
lacing with
weren't just
hers.
looking at a
They
building.
weren't just
They
looking
were
at a
looking at
building.
their
They were
skyline,
looking at
the
their
one they had built
skyline,
together.
the one they had built together.